Well, Coach, thanks for taking time out to visit with us. Certainly a tough loss at UCLA, another nail biter down to the end. Overall thoughts on that game?
Thought our toughness and our togetherness was really good, Dom. We came up a couple possessions short offensively and needed to be a little bit better, a couple times defensively, specifically securing rebounds. But all in all, we played with great fight, great toughness, and we really were together and connected on both sides of the ball. So those were the good things, just not enough to get the victory.
Micah Parrish had been on fire coming in this game. Did they do anything to try? It looks like they made an effort to try to slow him down.
Yeah, well, he's earned attention, right? Increased attention, and teams are, working to make it as difficult as they can on our perimeter players. So we got to continue to work on collapsing the defense and kicking it out to create good looks from three. I thought we had some really good looks from three, Dom, that we've made pretty consistently most of the year. Just couldn't get enough of those to go down, yesterday.
Obviously, it was a big game for Coach Cronin, 500th victory. But that whole atmosphere, how tough of an environment was that? All UCLA royalty was there. And I didn't have to tell you, everybody gets up to play for the Buckeyes, but they honored Bill Walton. That was a tough environment, wasn't
it? It was, but that's life in the Big Ten, and we've proven that we can play well in those type of environments. And so, I thought it was the history of that program, certainly honoring a legend like Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the building. And, it was a pretty cool, environment to take in. And I thought our guys, played to the level appropriately with their toughness and togetherness that is required to give yourself a chance to be successful and get a victory in that environment. So I was proud of the way we handled it, and we've proven that we can handle them well, really pretty consistently this year.
I know you did your homework going into this game. What have you learned about life in the Big Ten and the fact that you're going to have to go on the West Coast now?
Yeah, it's different, right? It's different. This is a type of trip we really, at any stop that I've been, you haven't had to do where you're gone for multiple true road games, for the same stretch. It's really been back to my days when I was at Valparaiso, where you go on a road trip and play 2 road games, maybe not with this amount of time in between, but before you got to go home and sleep in your own bed. So it's different. We talked to NBA teams down before the season about how they handled these type of trips. I visited with Coach McGuff. They went on a similar trip a week or two before we did. So I got a chance to sit down with him and pick his brain on some things he liked or maybe he didn't like. But this is life in the new Big Ten. And, it's just part of it. You got to find a way to maximize and get your guys ready to play their best on game day. And that's what we're doing.
Along those same lines, life in the Big Ten, life as a college basketball coach, these are uncharted waters, with the world of NIL, the transfer portal. Just what's recruiting like now for you as the head coach of Ohio State, keeping in mind the NIL?
It's different, right? It's different. But, I think thankfully with the continued support that we're getting in this program and, as we fight to raise our level, which we need to in the NIL space. And I think Ross Bjork is certainly leading the charge with that. We've had great support from the foundation and, what they've been able to do and really just how the Ohio State community has come together, I think sets us up in the future to be really successful, Don. But it's taken some work to get there. And, we still want to be a program who's going to recruit high school players. But, I think the days of kind of 4 and 5 man high school classes are going to be more rare where they used to be more common. We're still a young team. And I think as we look into next season, retention is going to be important, but also adding experience becomes really, really important. And, it used to be all high school all the time. And then there would be just a short window, right, of transfer recruiting. Now that window of transfer recruiting is still short, but it's more intense than it's ever been. So we'll have a blend on our roster, moving forward of high school freshmen and transfers, and hopefully, guys that have been in our program and developed. I still want us to be a program that, are leaders in development too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, they're both recruiting. You're recruiting high school kids, you're recruiting kids out of the portal. How do you handle all that? And how does that fall with the staff? And obviously, it all stops with you. You're the head coach.
Yeah, well, we have a great staff. I've been so impressed with how our staff has been, and that was one of the things that was of the highest priority. When I first got the job, was getting a staff in here who had a great deal of experience, recruiting being a really important part of that. We'll get to see that in full effect, this spring, and where we have a full spring together and a full roster building, opportunity, and I'm going to lean on them. But you're right. Like the final decision, right, comes down to me. But I also want to be a head coach who's really active in the recruiting space. I believe the relationships that are built in the recruiting space become really important, because once they get on campus, you certainly want to continue to strengthen that relationship. But the head coach shouldn't be starting from scratch. I believe in building a relationship with your players when they get to campus. That starts, significantly in the recruiting process. So I'm going to be really active. I have been really active in that, since becoming the head coach, and we'll continue to do that moving forward.
Well, Jake, I got 2 years eligibility left. They called me the elevator man when I played. I'm just saying.
Well, I need you to come out here and make a couple shots. How about that?
All right, brother.